Being great at sales is essential to your business and your career, but you and I both know that the stress of selling and dealing with constant rejection can be an emotional drain. My entire brand, No BS Selling, is based on the belief that professional sales is a skill and not a personality, and that to be better at sales takes constant refinement and a dedication to your craft. This show is for salespeople and entrepreneurs who are committed to improving their sales skills and getting better results, and are sick and tired of the BS game that often happens between buyers and sellers. Welcome to the No BS Sales Podcast, and I'm your host, Walker McKay. I'll help you and your sales team make selling easier, feel less cheesy, and be more lucrative. It's time to change the rules and level the playing field between you and the people you sell to. You're already good, let's be better. So last week's podcast was about stories, my story actually. And then the newsletter that I wrote was also about stories. And I've had stories on the brain. And I've always, I guess I want to share, if y'all don't already know, the power of stories, how we tell them to ourselves, and also how we might use them in sales, how they matter. So the first thing is the podcast I posted last week was my story, but it's about 18 months dated. And there have been a million more chapters of my story that have put into place. And I think, what people tell me sometimes when we talk is, wow, how can you be so positive? And how can you be so, have so much energy and have so much, whatever. And the reality is I don't even think about that. And I really don't even see myself as that positive of a person. Shit, man, things are tough. But the important part, what I wrote about my newsletter, and by the way, if you want to be on my newsletter list, it's growing like crazy. So if you want to be on it, must be something good there. Go to my website, walkermckay.com, and sign up for the newsletter. You'll start getting it. It comes out twice a week. Pretty good stuff on there. A lot of information I don't share anywhere else, ideas, thoughts, and then also book lists, ideas, videos, that kind of stuff that you won't get anywhere else. So if you want to get on the newsletter list, go to walkermckay.com, sign up for newsletter. But last week, I talked about my story, and my story is neither a good story nor a bad story. We've all got stories. But what matters, number one, is how do you tell yourself your story? Do you tell your story about yourself as the victim? Or do you tell your story about yourself as the victor, right? And none of us knows how this ends for any of us. But the reality is the story that we tell ourselves, if we tell the story to ourselves as a victim, woe is me, can't believe all this bad stuff keeps happening to me, I'm a terrible, I've had terrible luck. Reality is, maybe some people are lucky than others. And sure, we say hard work brings about luck. And maybe that's true too. But the reality is the difference between being lucky and unlucky is how you look at it. Because we all got good shit and bad shit that happens to us all the time without exception. Good shit and bad shit. And it depends on where you want to put your focus. And if you tell yourself, I'm naturally unlucky, bad shit happens to me all the time, guess what you'll focus on? You'll focus on the bad shit. Drives me crazy when people do that. I have a friend who, everything that happens, woe is me, can't believe this happens. He's a victim all the time. It takes so much fucking energy to be a victim. Maybe it draws some attention to him. Maybe it makes him, people may feel sorry for him or whatever, but that's not the kind of freaking attention I want. That's not the energy I want. Even for myself. I don't want to feel sorry for myself. I have, but I don't want to do that for long. That's a shitty way to go through life. Think about the story you're telling yourself and this stuff. And what if you believed instead of, I'm so unlucky? What if you believed instead, I'm lucky as hell and good things happen to me all the time? What if that's the story you told yourself? I'm lucky as hell and good things happen to me all the time. If that's what you began to program in your brain, here's the reality. It wouldn't change your luck,
but it would change what you're looking for, what you're paying attention to. My experience in the human brain, which is only one brain, a very fast-moving, distracted brain, is that, right, whatever we focus on is what's going to happen more of. And so think about if you focused on that you were lucky and you began to notice the things that were going on that were good, all of a sudden, things don't seem so bad. And I know that's trite and crazy, and there are some awful, awful days and weeks and months. But even if you said 2020, absolutely fucking awful, which a lot of people are saying, and maybe that's your truth, I hope not. Have there been some things that maybe, certainly, this was not the year that any of us planned to have? None of us planned to have this year. But have there not been some things that have been pretty cool that have happened anyway? That never would have happened? I mean, as you read my newsletter last week, my mom died 2 weeks ago. And, you know, the whole freaking world's up in flames, and crazy stuff happened to me and to everybody. Luckily, nobody in my family's gotten sick yet. But the good news is, in 2020, also, as soon as COVID was, you know, they shut everything down, damn it. As soon as they had to shut everything down, I moved my office over to my mother's house, because that's within a couple of weeks of when she was diagnosed with this fast-growing cancer. And the silver lining, the beauty in this fucking pandemic, is that I never would have taken the time to do that. And so I went over every day to my mom's house where I set up my office, and I visited with her every single day, because there's nowhere else to go, right? But I had lunch with her almost every day. We went for walks almost every day until the last 3 weeks. We had long conversations. Didn't take anything for granted time-wise. And when she died 2 weeks ago, I was right there with her. I got to spend great quality time with my sister and my family and talk with other people. All this in the confines of my doing my work too. And by the way, being over at that house and working hard, my business is up by 35%. Now, can I find some shitty things in 2020? Hell yeah, I can. But I don't want to focus on that stuff. That drives me crazy. There's stuff that I want to fix. And what I know is I'll fix it. It'll be okay. And that's the story I tell myself, because if you think of yourself as a victor, you know that you can overcome whatever comes your way, or you'll figure out how to fucking deal with it. I think that's the most valuable thing you can ever figure out is to have as a skill, is the ability to figure shit out. Because we all get thrown stuff every day. How are you going to figure it out? And those that can figure shit out become very successful. Those that get crushed by it, obviously not. So let's talk about stories another way. What are the stories you tell to other people? So stories you might tell to other people, let's just think about it let's think in a general sense. How often, if you were to engage in a conversation with somebody you didn't know, and you were just like a meeting, for example, how long can you stand to sit still in a meeting without saying anything? Chances are, if you're like me, not very long. Hate it, can't stand it, don't like to sit down in a meeting and be quiet. I don't like it, drives me crazy. Avoid those things like the plague. However, where can I sit down and be quiet and be engaged and be intrigued for 2.5, 3 hours without a second thought is a movie. A damn movie. I can sit still and be quiet. Why? Because they're telling a story. And as the story unfolds, I'm paying attention. We begin to see ourselves, and they say in a story, you begin to see yourself in different characters and identify. And it's the story that brings people in. It's the stories that connect us, right? Which is why this fucking pandemic, the cool thing is everybody in the world will have a story about this time in their lives. Everybody has a different perspective on it and be able to tell that story. By the way, how often do you get to tell your story? My guess is not very often. And if someone were to ask you about your story and really were sincerely curious, wouldn't that be kind of fun to share your story? Because I know you've lived an interesting life. We all have. But if you think about in your sales calls, where stories can come into play to engage people, here's a little trick. It's one of the easiest sales tools on the planet. It's not a trick. It's a tool. Is instead of telling somebody how great you are and why they should work with you and why you're different and why you're better, because I know you're thinking all those things and you know all those things, and just tell them straight out, like whatever I were to say, I've got the best sales training on the planet. What's the first thing you're thinking? That's bullshit. I don't know what else is out there, but I'm sure that's a bullshit statement, right? Same is true for your stuff. We've got the best customer service. People say that's bullshit. How is it more powerful instead, though, if you said, here's what my clients have told me. Walker, as far as I know, you've got the best sales training on the planet. What they tell me they like about working with me is that I'm real. What they say they like about working with me is that I understand business and often their business. And that I'm not just trying to make them do the same thing that all their competitors are doing. See, as a third-party story, it's a much more credible statement. Instead of saying, you should do this on a sales call, you might say, here's what some other people in your situation have decided to do. Does that make sense for you? If somebody is not admitting a problem or they don't see the severity of a problem and you're asking them about it, it's a great time to share a story and say, you know what, I work with a guy just like you, or he said the same things you did about 6 months ago or whatever time it was. And what they figured out was, they said, thank God we called you when we did, because we didn't really see it as a problem. However, had you not helped us figure it out as a problem, it could have cost us hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. I go back with the idea that people relate to stories. Stories are believable. Even ones that you know are fables have truth in them. Begin to relate to ourselves. Where do I fit in? Where does this fit? How do I make sense of this in my world? So if I can offer you a piece of advice today, use stories in your selling. Instead of sharing your opinions, tell what other people have told you. Another example of this, when I was in the commercial real estate business, instead of saying, hey, this will be a great building for you, or this is a great building, is to say, took another company through here, just like you. They said this was as close as they could find to a perfect building for them. Not sure if you think that or not, right? Or when I was taking shopping center developers around, instead of saying this is a great shopping center site, I would say, look, some other people have told me that this might be a good shopping center site. What do you think? As opposed to, hey, this is a great shopping center site, which makes anybody be skeptical about what you say. Don't tell them what you think. Nobody gives a shit about what you think. By the way, that's my newsletter for this week. Nobody gives a shit about what you think. And they don't. Tell people stories. Tell them what other people say. And the story you tell to yourself, so important. If you are struggling with how do I make my story good? How do I make the story I tell to myself good? I want you to think about in the last year, 2 years, 3 years, what are the highlights? What are the good things that happened? What are the things that you can say, you know what, that's pretty freaking cool. And focus on those things. Bad shit's gonna happen. It happens all the time to everybody. You're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna screw up, you're gonna fail. Don't let that hinder you. Because if the story you tell yourself is I'm a failure, then you'll quit trying. If the story you tell yourself is it's all going to be okay in the end, and if it's not okay now, then it's not the end. If you can find a way to tell that story to yourself, it makes it easier, it makes it better, and quite frankly, it'll improve your attitude. It makes it easier to face things, and you know something else is going to come up. It always does. Focus on what are the good things that are happening. Tell your prospects stories about themselves. They typically won't recognize themselves in it. You want to make a point, tell a story about it. Share what other people think. It's the best way to engage your prospects, keep them interested, and let them know and see themselves in a story. I've started a new program a couple of months ago. It's been oversubscribed. So I've opened up a few more spots. I'm doing some coaching for entrepreneurs. One-on-one coaching for entrepreneurs who are trying to grow their business, wondering, should I hire a sales team? Or they got a sales team, wondering, do I have the right people or not? Or they're saying to themselves, I'm the only one that knows how to sell around here. How come nobody else can sell? What the hell do I do about that? So the first thing I'll do is work with them one-on-one to figure out what the deal is. It's expensive. It's not right for everybody. If you want to find out more about that, email me, walker@walkermckay.com. Happy to talk to you about the one-on-one accelerated coaching program. Also, the course that I published is out now, getting really great, getting a lot of sales, a lot of great feedback on it. No BS Sales System course. If you want to find out about that, go to my website, walkermckay.com. It's $495. It's about 6 hours of video and about a 40-page workbook. It's the system that I teach and some tools you have to use it and some mindsets you need to have. How do you deal with prospects who are difficult? How do you make sure you understand your prospect situation? How do you disqualify people quickly, not waste time? How do you close business faster than you ever dreamed possible at higher margins? You'll learn all that stuff from the course. Thank you for listening. No BS Sales Team, you are great. I appreciate your listening and sharing this stuff. Sign up for my newsletter if you haven't. Buy my course if that's something that interests you. If you want to get better in sales, call me about coaching. Happy to talk to you. Walker@walkermckay.com. You're already good. Let me help you get better.